Welcome to the Justin Johnson Show, the podcast. We've actually got a special treat for you today. Somebody that we've actually held off on. He's got a busy schedule. Jarrod Hunt. I'm not exactly sure the title, but he's our industrial guru at Colliers International, and been a top producer for a couple decades, for sure. But definitely, if there's a big project going in town, his name's affiliated with it as leasing or selling it. And that's where we start the show off. But the reason we started this show, and I'm going to take a little piece just from the Higginson interview that he said, because I've actually had a lot of feedback from that. Trials and tribulations are mandatory. Misery is optional, right? I mean, misery is optional, and I think I see trials, tribulations, people equate with misery, you know. And so when I started this, right, it was initially, hey, what can I do to get on the social platform? It wasn't natural to me to be maybe promote my listings and things like that in real estate, but to get talking about the other stuff it just wasn't natural for me to talk about it. You know, I could with another seasoned veteran broker that's been doing stuff and bitch and complain, and you know, or talk about the successes we've had, right, or things like that. But at the end of the day, I want to convey, you know, what I realized real quickly is I was kind of putting a team together, some young people that were looking to me as like, hey, how can I make better choices, right, and doing things. Learn from somebody that's been there before. These young, this generation, 20s, I would say, 30-year-olds, they're
a lost cause.
They're lost cause. I don't know how to reach them anymore.
Yeah.
Just kidding on that. But so we've had a good discussion with that, and I think that the reason I think this kind of falls into everything that I just said there and some of the intro that we had before was that your background isn't commercial real estate.
No.
You were raised farming,
right,
in a larger scale operation farming in a community in Idaho that's the majority of what people were doing. It was the base of all economics, right?
Right.
And and you had, that's what you were raised in. You actually pursued it very hard. To my recollection, we've known each other for 20 plus years. And we started out the same company with our mentors and people that were there.
Right.
And so, you know, it's kind of been fun to watch you grow and change. But when you came here, I remember thinking, holy shit, you know, I mean, honestly.
This guy doesn't know anything.
No, not that you didn't know. You had a lot of knowledge, but it's like, how would it be? Because you got your education. So I'm jumping ahead because I wanted to have you maybe discuss some of these things and your youth and what it was like being raised in that community. I'd like to even maybe start there a little bit, but when I met you, you had, I think a master's or doctorate or something level equivalent from University of what? It's a farming school?
Well, Utah State. Actually, just a bachelor's from Utah State. Business administration, ag business, had a dual major there. And, you know, I just always felt like I was, you know, created to be a farmer. I loved every aspect of it. And so, you know, figured that, you know, getting some formal education would be beneficial long term, and got an associate's degree in agronomy. So all the nerdy stuff, you know, plant pathology, soil fertility, you know, all that kind of stuff.
I didn't even know they taught that in school at all. They teach that in school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For the nerds, guys.
Yeah, nerds.
I mean, everything that you were doing was that. It was everything you liked, you were about, what you saw for your future and everything that way. And I think that's, you talk about making changes in life, right? I mean, you know, or trials, tribulations, things that happen. Of course, I never put two and two together when Bill Clinton signed NAFTA, right? And it wasn't even until years later that I, you know, that the downfall or all the fallout's really the right word, of what something like that, right? A policy that everybody was like, oh yeah, North American free trade, right?
Yeah.
And an agreement that was signed, and which made Canada start to grow a lot more potatoes and think they could compete. They were heavily subsidized to do that, and they're dumping the market with potatoes that are, well, they're not grown in that range where Idaho is, right? I mean, there is an Idaho russet potato because there's a perfect climate, and guys have been doing it for 100 plus years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so it was, just a variety of factors that kind of changed our world on us. So, finished college, early 90s, newly married, moved to Idaho, life was, all before me. And it was just really a matter of how many hours can you stay awake and get work done, right?
Yeah.
That was the model to success. And I didn't mind working. I still don't mind working. And then in 1996, NAFTA was put into action. I think the intentions were good to create, a multinational trading bloc that would be good for Mexico, U.S., Canada, and there were a lot of unintended consequences that come with every policy. You can generally count on the government to screw things up.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really good at that, and they often see a narrow vision, and everything else outside of that myopic view is not something that anybody spends any time worrying about until it becomes a problem. Well, so in 1995, we were selling potatoes, open market potatoes. They sell by the hundredweight, so a 100-pound quantity is kind of the measure that they go by, and we were selling potatoes for like $7.50 to $8 a hundredweight at that time in the fall of 1995. By the fall of 1996, the price had dropped to about 50 cents a
No
hundredweight.
way.
Yeah. Our break
I had
even
no
was
clue
was
that's-
around $4.
You probably told me this at one time. So that break even's at $4,
Yeah,
and it's trading at 50
at 50
cents.
cents.
Okay.
And that year, and for a couple of years subsequent to that, there were growers that would spend all the money to grow the crop, spend all year, just working their guts out, grow this beautiful crop of potatoes, put it into, very expensive storage facilities, so that the processors could take them out, over the next, 3 to 6 months after harvest. And they would get handed a transportation bill at the end of it all, where it's not only are we not paying you for your potatoes, we're handing you the trucking bill to haul them to the processor. And so, a lot of guys would just scoop them up with big front loaders and put them out, in the desert, just let them rot. They'd feed them to cattle, do whatever, because it's like, well, rather than store them, let's just dispose of them, get rid of them.
Yeah, they're businessmen.
And so fortunately, we were never quite that bad off, but open market potatoes, they weren't worth really even harvesting at those prices. And so it was ugly, and we were losing a good chunk of money every year doing this, and after 3 consecutive years of getting your teeth kicked in, you're like, I think there's probably something better I can do with my life than basically bankrupt a farm that my great grandfather had started in 1905, and I still own that same land today. It's been in the family since 1905, and I wanted to transition, into something that didn't have a glass ceiling. I'm totally comfortable with this self-employed entrepreneurial environment. And about that same time, I signed up for some management training seminars that Texas A&M was sponsoring for production ag guys. And so you'd go down to Austin, Texas for a week, go through a series of classes and seminars and stuff, and they'd give you some homework to do. and you'd go back and implement the homework for a year, and then come back
On your farm.
On your farm.
Okay, yeah,
And
very
then you'd come back the following year, and basically have kind of a debrief with the same group of guys. And there was about 50 or 60 growers from North America, handful of Canadian guys. There were everything from vegetable growers from California to corn and soybean guys from the Midwest to small grain farmers from Saskatchewan and you know, everybody. And so it was a really valuable networking environment. But, you know, I'm a young, impressionable, mostly broke potato farmer from Idaho at that time. And I'm just like hanging on every word. And they had some very highly credentialed and recognized professors from Purdue and Texas A&M and Iowa State, you know, come in, economists and all this stuff, you know, over this course of time. And I sat through one presentation. He was a guy, his last name was Cole. I think he's a emeritus professor now out of Virginia. I mean, we're talking 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And
You
so,
remember.
so anyway, he talked about, you know, making sure that you're taking a global view of your business because it's a global economy. And if what you're doing is not competitive on a global stage, you better fix that and get competitive and make whatever changes you need to make in order to be world class, whatever that means. You know, if you're a beef guy from Oklahoma or a corn guy from Missouri, you better figure out how to be competitive on a global stage, either specializing into some niche market where you can get premium pricing. Maybe it's an organic play, maybe it's a premium purebred Angus, whatever, where you can charge a little extra, and maybe you're going directly to consumers, and maybe you're just punching the volume button and just say, I'm going to scale up and become so large and efficient that my cost per unit of production is competitive. So I'm sitting there and realizing I kind of don't check any of those boxes, and I don't know really where to go. And so I thought about that for the next couple of years of what am I going to do to make that happen? And I couldn't quite figure it out. And so, you know, after a few more years of some pretty significant financial losses, you know, I sat down with my dad. I'm like, hey, you know, I can go do something else and make my way through the world, but I don't want to lose so much money that you've got nothing left, you know, for retirement, that we lose this ground that was taken out of sagebrush 100 years ago. And, you know, I mean, there was a very emotional, like, realization, you know, through that process. It was a difficult process to come to that conclusion. But so, you know, kind of fast forward a little bit, and we were doing a little bit of business with a real estate broker, and he invited me to come down and take a look at what he was doing in Utah, and you know, there were certain things that were super intimidating to me. I didn't know anybody in the state of Utah, had no idea about anything commercial property wise, but I knew that I could work. And I looked around, I'm like, well, I'll outwork anybody here. So I got that. I can hang on to that. But you know, I just figured, well, let's go figure it out. And so I talked my wife into coming down, and we had 2.5 kids, and stressful time in your life, and no money, and young, and you're walking into a fully commissioned occupation. There's no safety nets, there's no paychecks, no insurance, no nothing. I mean, here's a clipboard,
It's
and
as tough as it gets.
pat it on the head and say, go get him, Tiger, you can do this. And so that was really, kind of my entrance into commercial real estate.
Let me stop you there. I just asked this, right? Because I'm sitting here thinking about that. There's people. My dad worked for the Department of Interior, right? He always told us, hey, you don't want to get something you're 100% commission on, right? I mean, you got, your family, if you can raise a family, do that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, me and all my brothers, I think he thought that we were all retarded anyway, and that he he knew some people at the post office or the FBI, right?
Right.
He did have friends. They worked in the same federal, and he thought, I think I can get him a job doing something, like delivering mail, right? Because they're not going to make it in what they say they're going to do in it, right?
Right.
So, and we've laughed about that many times because
Hey, nothing beats a good government job, right?
yeah, I mean, he had a great career, for 43 years and
Right.
got his increases and great health benefits, and all that. And so we benefited from that. And as a family, and it worked for him, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, did you even look at a job? I mean, when you had that discussion with your wife, was she, all wives want to say, hey, you know what, maybe we could do this, and you're not going to make as much, but we can get by?
She was definitely nervous. I think, probably a week after we got married, she realized she might have made the biggest mistake of her life. I don't know. We rung the 30-year bell this year,
awesome.
so she's stayed with me all these years through all the pain and turmoil and mistakes that I've made. But she grew up. Her dad was a professor at a university in Central Washington. Very comfortable lifestyle and very secure, and he did an excellent job at what he did. But I knew enough about myself that I knew that would be a real challenge for me to ever be happy, in kind of that role.
Yeah.
And not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but that's just who I am.
Yeah.
And, a couple of years after I got involved in commercial real estate and made a really, I guess, fatal decision to go down to Cedar City, opened up an office for the company down there, and realized, you could have 100% market share in a small community, and it's still not, and Cedar City's grown a lot since then, but at the time, this was in 1999, and it was tough. You're just struggling to make ends meet, and so I made Karen a deal. Let's give it a year. Let's not question each other or anything for a year, and then at the end of the year we'll kind of figure it out. So, and she was a good sport, very supportive, and paid a heavy sacrifice. It's hard, little kids and no money and husband that's gone all the time trying to figure life out and a career. And so at the end of that year, I think I made $18,000 or something that first year in 1999. Even back then, that's not a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like I came down here with any money. I came down here with no money from Idaho. And so I said, I got this great idea. Let's give it another year, and, and so I just felt like, with each passing, transaction or experience, that I was learning something. I was learning how to, figure out deals. I was learning how to communicate with people, to read them, to read body language, to ask the right questions and figure out who you should spend time with, who you shouldn't spend time with from a professional, standpoint. Because there's a lot of time wasters out there.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
ton of time wasters. And so you've got to figure that out early in the process, and then you can make a decision of, well, this person or this organization might be a time waster, but I'm kind of interested in it, so I'm willing to waste a little time, see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then others, it's just like, I don't want to waste time because this isn't ever leading to, a successful transaction. So you kind of cut bait and run. But so the next year was a little bit better, marginally better, but it still was frustrating. And so we decided to move back up to Provo.
Was that 2 years down Cedar?
I think it was a little over a year, maybe a year and a half, something like that. And so moved back up to Provo where there was just more going on.
Yeah.
Just a bigger market to where there's more opportunity to do stuff. And I hired a headhunter. I said, maybe this deal just isn't right for me. Let's go back and kind of reboot and kind of dusted off my resume and hired this guy to go find me some career opportunities, and I had 4 job interviews through this process, and I got offered 4 jobs. Every one of them that I interviewed, they offered me the job, and I said no to every one of them. And so Karen's kind of looking at me saying, so you keep saying no, and some of these jobs, and they were good jobs, some of them were, base salary, $70,000 a year, plus some commissions, kind of back in the ag world, which I was super comfortable with. And I just couldn't get over that hump of, yeah, but I'm stuck. I'm going to be doing what they tell me to do, and I'm going to get paid what they think I should be paid, and that just, I just couldn't get there mentally. And so finally, after going through that process and wasting some time and some money that I didn't have, I just decided I'm going to make this work one way or another. And and there was the .com bust, and that was a rough time in the market. And I was doing a little bit of office leasing, a little bit of retail. Back then you just kind of work on what there is to work on.
Yeah.
And I could just never reconcile, understanding technology companies, what makes them good, what makes them bad, what makes them successful, what makes them fail. I just wasn't smart enough to figure out who to spend time with.
Yeah.
But the industrial guys, I could figure out, oh, that's a cool widget. You're going to make a lot of money because that's a cool widget you're selling.
Yeah.
I want to ride on your ship, okay? And so it just became much easier for me to figure out, those companies and those entrepreneurs that I had a common chord with, and I knew they were going to be successful, and so I, early in the probably like 2003 or 4, I just said, this is what I do and who I am. I'm an industrial guy. Warehouses and manufacturing plants. That's really all I want to work on.
Yeah.
And at the time, nobody in our market, there were guys in the Salt Lake market because it was a lot bigger that were industrial specialists, but really nobody in Utah County. And so, I just decided that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And,
I remember that.
I never really
that.
looked back.
Yeah.
I've just been, trying to figure out, how to put food on the table ever since. And so that's kind of my story. But it's been an interesting process, because when you look back at how poorly prepared I was and poorly equipped for this business, just God bless America. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it, for crying out loud. Because, I'm a potato farmer. What do I know about commercial real estate? And you just get in and figure it out. I've always been, pretty decent at math and finances and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. And so, I could put together, investment models and stuff like that without, really spending a lot of time stressing it. And I've learned how to communicate in writing a lot more efficiently than I ever thought I would.
Yeah.
If my good mother were alive today, she would remind me that I failed ninth grade English, and here I am, spending all day in front of a computer writing contracts and corresponding and writing and
difficult things sometimes, very difficult.
Yeah,
right?
and you have to articulate that in a way, and you've got to carefully parse words together, and how is this going to be interpreted, and is it going to be misunderstood, or is it going to send the wrong signal, and so I'm constantly probably overthinking that stuff, because once that email is sent, you can't pull it back, and so you've got to
No, I don't know if you can overthink some of that. I mean, there's a natural style that ends up coming, but you've known me for a lot of years. Sometimes I could be argumentative, or hey, this is the way it's got to be, you dumbasses, And
well, that's why you have to have those conversations in person, because then you can say, I never said that, and nobody can prove you wrong. It's like, but if it's in writing, it's like, here's the email, you said it.
Yeah.
So it's a balance.
Yeah, they can subpoena emails.
Yeah.
And now it is in the cloud. I mean, I think you have to take a lot of thought into that. How you communicate, what you say, what.
Yeah.
And they do have lasting impressions, right? I mean, to tame as a real estate broker, right? I mean, a lot of people, the middleman, right?
Yeah.
The purpose and what we feel out there in the community, I think, is you made a choice to go industrial
Right.
at a time that I think the market, at least here and I think even nationally, started to change. It's like the perspective of a company leasing and selling their own properties. There's still companies out there that have people involved in doing that, right? But they hire the best broker in the market because they can bridge all those different companies and people and all the relationships you've got, right? When I see that you're the listing agent on transactions, and I've got other friends that are the same way, it's like, okay, I'm going to call. I see some other guys on that I know they're the listing agent. They've been pretty successful. I thought, the guy is so difficult to work with. Maybe we'll have to come back to that property. Right?
Well, and to be fair, I've probably not been the easiest guy to get a hold of the last few years, and I'm really self-conscious about that.
Yeah.
I literally will get 75 phone calls a day, maybe 100, and 200-300 emails a day, and just trying to keep ahead of that.
Oh yeah.
And I've tried to clone myself, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so, all I ended up with was a three-legged dog out to the side. So,
Yeah.
But
Well, it comes down, so the work ethic, all the other things
Yeah,
you do
and-
in there, I think that's.
But I still care. It
Yeah.
still bothers me to not take somebody's call. When you're hitting, auto reply or whatever. If I'm in a meeting, I'm in on the phone or whatever, I'll call you back, and it bothers me because I know how annoyed I get when I'm trying to get a hold of somebody and I can't get through, or I just like, well, do you even care? And I'm sure that there are people out there that have that perspective of me of, I don't care, or I'm unresponsive or whatever. I just wish they could see my life and they'd be like, oh, okay, we'll give this guy a break. But no, it's been great. I would much rather be too busy than not busy enough.
Yeah.
And from when you're a commission sales agent, you never not want to be busy because that means you're not making money. And I still to this day, I've only worked for someone else, got a paycheck for 4 months my entire life, and I hated it. And so I often think, and I say it out loud, and my wife's like, would you quit saying that? Because it's not true. But I feel like I'm unemployed every single day, and I've got to wake up and figure out how to create value somehow today for somebody that they're going to pay me something today.
You say that because it's true. I went through a midlife crisis, right? And I stepped out of the market for a couple of years, right? And not only did you take every one of my clients that I was working with at the time, you took it to a whole new level. And I say that, and I've told other people that, right? I've always said that, even early on. I realized that every single day I'm unemployed.
Yeah.
I maybe just got a huge commission check, that took me 2 years to get to, right? I mean, but the check came, and I've seen people slack off. I've done it.
It doesn't even faze me.
I've gotten better at that because I realized that, I'm only as good as the last deal, for sure. It doesn't bring the next one, for sure. And in fact,
and by the time you boil it down, what seems like a big chunk of money, God bless America,
Yeah.
Uncle Sam, they take their pound of flesh, and then you have all the other normal expenses of, insurance, just those things that they're not fun to pay for, but you're kind of afraid not to have them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're left with, a few nickels out of a dollar bill. And you're like,
Yeah.
I thought that would feel different to make, a 6-figure commission, but tomorrow's just another day, whoop-de-doo, and you move on. And so, I've never gone on a vacation as a result of a transaction, of like, oh, you know what, I'm going to treat myself to 2 or 3 weeks off. And I've certainly, made commissions where that would be justified, but it's just not my train of thought. And, and I truly believe this, that I'm not working for me, I'm working for my family.
Yeah.
I've got to provide them opportunities to have a great life and to do things that they want to do that bring them joy and happiness. And that brings me joy and happiness. And so, I would rather see my wife and my daughters go take a trip and have the time of their life than me go take a trip, because it's not the same. It's not the same thing. It's weird. Maybe I need a therapist. Maybe that's what this is.
You need a therapist, maybe, but I don't know if it's going to change.
Yeah, we need to get a therapist going here and have just kind of an open dialogue that goes out to the internet of how screwed up I really am. But it's just something that, and I don't know if it was based on my upbringing. My dad, who's still alive today, 88 years old. True story. No hip. Right hip's gone. He had a hip replacement that went south on him a few years later. They took it out. He figured out how to get around and be, self-sufficient.
He doesn't have a hip.
He doesn't have a hip.
Okay.
He still mows his own lawn, still grows his own garden, cleans his own house, does his own shopping. 88 years old, lives alone, and so that's the guy that I want to be, right?
Yeah.
And he's never done anything but work his whole life, and I think he's had a satisfying, joyful life in just a different way. A lot of people, I think, that don't understand the joy and satisfaction that can come from that sense of accomplishment that comes from work. They don't get it, and that's fine. But I do get that, and I do get a lot of a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction from being successful in whatever endeavor, And a few years ago, I went through a midlife crisis. So, and Karen, don't watch this part because I know you hate it when I say it. So the joke is that, so there was a business for sale, tractor dealership up in Idaho. And this is about 2012.
I was waiting for this to come in, actually. I was waiting to see
so
when you...
I said, I can either buy this tractor dealership, we can buy a house on the beach, or I can get a girlfriend. And I'm not buying a house on the beach, so what do you want to do? So that's why I have a tractor dealership. She hates it when I say that, but and it's not true. But and so
But you couldn't leave it alone. I mean,
I couldn't leave it alone.
I could not. It was there. It was your DNA.
Right.
To not, you don't want to be on the beach. So to add to that one little thing, and I found this out through my own midlife crisis as well.
Right.
So if you found yours and was productive, I found productive ways after that, really for the most part, because what I found out is I thought I was on this treadmill, that I wasn't getting any happiness anymore, that I was doing this stuff, and I love my family. That's really why I was doing it too. I think we share a lot of the same things that way. But somehow I had let that get in there that, oh man, I don't have the time. Well, I didn't want to do anything else. I really didn't want to do anything. I actually enjoyed working. I had let some of those things kind of creep in. Having said that, to go back into having, and I did get a girlfriend actually in there too. that was so I chose the wrong path because it didn't last. And even before the whole thing was like down there, I'm like, holy crap, I've blown it, right? It's like when you've done something and it's not like I can back.
Yeah.
Right. And it impacted it hurt a lot of people that I love. Right. So that's something I learned there. And at the end of the day, it was a course that I was on that would have been pure happiness for me. Right. I lost sight of that because I was looking what other people were doing. And the point I wanted to make with that is I have seen other people get the house on the beach or back off or get the big commission, do that. I don't see them be truly happy. Right. The joy that comes from that or building it. I think there's loss. I think that's why there is a midlife crisis or a later life crisis. Why the hell is your dad so happy? Same with my dad. I mean, his day's full of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's as busy now as he's ever been in his life, and he's writing books sometimes. He's doing, genealogy. Whatever he can do, right? He's hacking every square. He drives my mom insane, you know what I mean? Now he's cooking. She doesn't do it. Now she's made him do the laundry because it's like, you need something to do. I can get a list for you, which is what he used to do for us. But it goes back to what you're saying. So, okay.
Well, you have to have purpose. And that's, honestly, I think that's the fear that my dad has is losing purpose in life.
Yeah.
Then what? You just sit there and die. And so he's always had purpose. He's always had something going on. He's kept busy and productive, and he's worked even when he didn't need to work. And I think that's kept him young. It's kept him engaged mentally. I can go, sit down with him right now and have a very deep dive into pretty much any topic you want to talk about. And we love arguing about politics. And, we can talk about, fiscal policy for the government. We can talk about the economy. We can talk about politics, the weather, farms, whatever. And it's like time stood still because he's just as sharp now as he was 40 years ago. And it's one of the joys in life that I have, and he and I guess my perspective is that I worked with him as a partner, a business partner, for a number of years before I started doing real estate.
Yeah.
And there was a friendship, there was a respect, there was a camaraderie that is often not developed between a son and a father because of how much time I spent with him. Mm-hmm. For the first 6 or 7 years after Karen and I were married, I spent more time with my dad working than I ever did with my wife. And so I'm not saying that's a good thing or a right thing. It's just
a byproduct of what really happened.
It's the way it was.
Yeah.
And so, and I've always wanted to, make him proud and not do anything that would be embarrassing to him or to the family. And that's probably kind of kept me on the right side of a few, key decisions in life of like, and you almost kind of feel like this sense of responsibility because you know how hard your ancestors worked to provide you with the opportunities that you have. And so I feel that moral sense to do the same for my kids of, and it's not an obligation. I don't do it begrudgingly at all, but I do feel this sense of responsibility to carry on and not waste what was given to me. And that's the thing that frustrates me a little bit when I see, we talked about the youth today, and I'm generalizing. There's some awesome people, amazing people, way smarter than me. Yeah. But when you live in a country like America, when pretty much any opportunity to do anything you want is right in front of you, and you don't take it and run with it as fast and as hard as you can run, to me that's a tragedy. It breaks my heart to see people that squander the opportunity that this country and the sacrifice of literally millions of Americans that have gone before us, that they don't capitalize on that they don't work hard and think smart and try and make your household better, your neighborhood better, your community better, your state, whatever way that you can contribute, you should be looking to contribute. And as a human race, I think we have that obligation to do better. And we also have the right to expect the next generation to do the same. And I think, we're getting way
No, this
weeds.
is exactly what it did.
But
that's why we're talking about this right now. We're in a bit of a crisis, I would say, in this country because of that.
I think a lot of parenting by Jarrod Hunt. I think a lot of parents make a mistake by not treating their kids, talking to their kids, and expecting their children to act responsibly. You talk to them like adults. You expect certain things. You don't tolerate bad behavior, and obviously, if a little toddler is throwing a fit, you don't sit a 3-year-old down and have an adult conversation with a 3-year-old, but certainly as a 7-year-old, you sit them down and like, listen, that's not going to fly here. These are the reasons why. This is what you're expected to do, and kind of, not be authoritarian, but also not just ignore it and throw a phone or a iPad or whatever, turn on the TV and walk out of the room and say, it's not worth the headache. I got other things to do. Like what? What's more important? And when Karen and I were dating, there were 2 things that I was looking for in a wife. First of all, I had to be attracted to her. Sure. I mean, it's a long life if you're not attracted to your wife. So, check that box. Yeah. And secondly, I wanted to make sure that whoever I married was going to be a mother that I could trust to raise my kids, because I knew that I wasn't going to be around all the time to, intercept or, be involved and stuff like that. And it's provided me the freedom and the luxury to go, neck deep into my career as that trade-off, so that, hopefully I've, provide security and safety and financial, support and stuff. But, I think that people need to be looking at that when they're selecting, their mates, of who's going to be a good dad, who's going to be a good mom. Some of the other stuff doesn't matter as much, reasonably attractive, you don't have like a third eye growing out of your head, but, be realistic about what life is, and maybe take a look in the mirror once in a while and realize, I don't bring that much to the table myself. So maybe I'll dial back my expectations a little bit.
Sure.
And so, And it's been a great blessing, to have a really good mom be the mother of my kids. Um, and, I couldn't be prouder of where my kids are at today. They're doing amazing things, and it's super cool to be a part of that, and to be a part of their lives, and continue to support them in their endeavors. And so, it's I'm not old enough to sit in a rocking chair and, oh, life's done. But, I look back and we got a few things right. We certainly made a lot of mistakes. I've made a pile of mistakes
Sure.
in my life.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because I didn't want to do good. I didn't want to be better and, produce and provide and contribute and all of those kinds of things. Maybe I've gone about it wrong, and maybe I've let the pendulum swing too far one way or the other at times. But, I think as Americans, we really need to look around and kind of reset our thinking. And if you can figure that out, there's a lot of people that don't want to figure it out, and you're just going to have that much more advantage over everyone around you if you can figure out how to work and figure out that secret sauce of accomplishment and the joy and the good pride, not the bad pride, but the good pride of success, then just think about all the millions of people out there that haven't figured that out. You're just going to steamroll them. And, and so I bought that business up in Idaho, still have it today. And it's been a wild ride, absolutely wild ride. And it's
That
been
business?
Yeah.
It's a Holland dealer. I don't know if you want to say the name. Or
Intermountain New Holland is the company. Fantastic team of people. I've learned a lot. At times I've had these little social experiments of, how do you motivate an organization? Well, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try that. Oh, that didn't work. Well, and so I've got an amazing management team up there. Really, really good people. Couldn't be happier. And there were some tough times. I mean, there was a few years, we were losing $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to swallow. And you're just like, how hard I've worked to just watch it blow up in your face.
Yeah.
But I believed in what we were trying to accomplish. And at a certain point, you're in it so deep that you have no choice but to see it through. And that's kind of where I was at. And but we figured a lot of stuff out, and put the right group of people together, and I think they're happy. My observation is that they like the organization, they like who they work with, and they're being compensated correctly, and again, we don't do everything right. We try and do more things right than wrong. But the thing that it's been valuable from a real estate perspective, it is at times a distraction. It takes time out of my day. In fact, tomorrow morning I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and then I'll be sitting in Burley, Idaho at 8:30 and have a full day of meetings and get home tomorrow night at midnight. That's my Wednesdays right now, because we're doing a construction project, and that's been pretty time consuming. But it's reminded me of the perspective that my clients have as business owners, and it's reminded me that real estate is just a vehicle for a company. It's at times a problem that just has to have the right solution. And I know what it's like to have payroll and to be scratching your head and like, geez, I've got 28 people that are relying on me to not be stupid. So let's not be stupid. And, it's kind of kept me attached to my clients, if you will, because I see life through their eyes, because I'm living it, real time, and and I've got a great team here that work with me in the real estate game, and they cover a lot of stuff for me when I'm not available. And
How many people do you have working with here?
3
Okay.
right now, and kind of looking to maybe grow that if it makes sense, and the right people, and that's the key is somebody can check out on paper perfect, they got a degree in whatever, and they went to the right school and the right degree, and but then it's that secret sauce. It's like that personality. Are they humble? Are they going to work? Do they have some street sense, about them, where they can problem solve and just kind of sort through issues, and emotional maturity, and all of those things, reliability, integrity, all of those things that you want, of a teammate, and that's where it gets tricky.
It's actually more gold than I anticipated, actually, from the standpoint, because that's, I really, the whole idea of a podcast, right? I'm as qualified to do a podcast as any, but I thought, what, I know people that I respect, and all the issues that you've been talking about with relationship to America and the opportunities that we have. I think people have just lost that. They're not reminded about it enough. You know what I mean? What the expectation is. There is you live in a country like America.
Yeah.
That has been, and I hate to get political from that, but Florida, where so many people came from Cuba, right?
Right.
And that whole legislature down there, things have played out in Ron DeSantis, and he's tackling some of these issues that are big, right? This is just one example. I mean, there's lots that I could point to, but for me, when I look at it, it's like, he gets those guys up there, right? And you could, they weren't born in America. They've got that Latino,
Right.
And they're saying, no, we're not going this road. This is what we left, right?
Right, and that's that immigrant mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like gold, because they know what it's like to go days without food. There's no Americans that know what it's like to go hours without food. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
There's a hot pocket in the freezer that the government paid for, and a microwave that the government paid for, and a TV that the government paid for. So let's just sit here and, do nothing with our life. And that's what made, you get back to like the greatest generation, the guys that fought in, World War I, World War II, all that, and we're a little bit removed from, some of the other, great conflicts of this country. But I mean, if you could go back to the Revolutionary War and what those guys were fighting for, if you ever stand in, some of those historic places where the great battles for this country were fought and lives were lost, destroyed, damaged, all kinds of suffering. And you just stand there for just a minute and look around at some of those artifacts and some of those places where these great stories unfolded. How can you not have this inner desire of, like, I've got to do something to contribute. I've got to do my part, because there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that died to make us ingrateful, overweight, lazy. And trust me, I'm overweight, and I'm at times ungrateful, and gluttonous and all of that. But it's. I just, I watch probably too much news, and I just think, really, can our elected officials, are they really that dumb? Are they really making these policy decisions? Do they not know basic third grade math, add and subtract? You can't borrow your way to prosperity. We're in the middle of this big, crisis of, debt ceiling. And I think it was Rahm Emanuel that coined the term of don't let a good, crisis go to waste or something like that, and, capital from a political perspective, you can grab a lot of power during a crisis.
Yeah.
We saw it during COVID. We voluntarily handed up a lot of freedoms that we'll never get back, because of 9/11.
Yeah.
Try and get on a plane without taking your shoes off, and it's just like, what? I have to take, what? Why? And it's, on the one hand, I get it. You want to feel safe. You want to make sure that everybody's been checked out that's, could potentially put your life in harm's way. But on the same token, you kind of want to look around and say, can't we just weed out the idiots? Can't we just load them up and send them somewhere that they're appreciated? And somehow, and it's a tragedy to see, all of those things that made America what it is are just slowly eroding. Whether it's, we're trying to we've got all these magical answers that we're looking for a problem. It's like, oh, great, let's make everybody drive an electric car, but we also don't want to generate any more power. It's like, oh, well, how's that going to work? And it's it's crazy.
On that front there, when they first even started talking, now I love Elon Musk, right? I mean, I love him, and he saw an opportunity, is what I mean. I don't know if he wanted to make this the utopian, world. He saw an opportunity, and he put everything on the line to make it work. And at the same time, he's building rockets that's going to get us off this planet because he maybe could foresee shit's going to hit the fan so hard and heavy. But at the end of the day, when they came out with that, it's one of the few things, right? You're not supposed to pour paint down your toilet, right? Or in the bucket. You're supposed to take it to the store. They've been trying to recycle batteries from the cars for a while, and you're not supposed to just wing the batteries in there, right, into the garbage can. I do it a lot of times. I don't know what I'm supposed to do otherwise. But the point is, we got this toxic thing, with the batteries and stuff, and that came out. I'm like, they're going to put batteries in. I mean, the size of the batteries in cars and all this other stuff, and it's like, how is this not? We'd not even thought about that. I mean, there was policies being made when not even addressed. And one other thing I want to say, I've become a historian as I've gotten older. There's a couple historian guys, Ron Chernow, who wrote the Hamilton and George Washington, which I felt like they were incredible books. That I actually read them multiple times because I'm trying to get what was happening at that time. A lot of calamity, right? I mean, a lot of things that maybe they were in difficult times as well. And the one thing that I didn't realize, and I think it has, I bring this up a lot. Okay, maybe it doesn't apply to everything we're talking about now, but to me, it's worth reviewing over and over. Is that at the time of the Revolutionary War, the peak of that, right? There were loyal Englishmen, Tory, right, that were God save the king, and they were like, why are we even trying to fight this, right? And a lot of money and a lot of land and a lot of things like that. There was probably 50%. So that was about at least 30% of the population, probably, right? 50% of the population just had their head down trying to make a living, right?
Right.
And they weren't really
They were just
concerned.
hoping to have dinner that night.
Yeah, and we're talking like, there was, they weren't even burning kerosene, right, for light, when it got dark, you kind of maybe finished up what you were going to write for the day or do whatever, and you were going to bed, right? And you had to get up early to start to feed your family. I mean, it is. So I've heard somewhere between 14 and 20% of this country at that time, right? We got this definitive time period of the Revolutionary War of these guys. When they did sign that Declaration of Independence, they put a target on their back, right? You might as well just put a crosshair right here, because eventually if that would have happened, they all would have been hung. You know
Oh,
what I
for
mean?
sure.
And I think we don't talk about that enough from that standpoint. And at the end of the day, I'm thinking, is that true? Is that, you know, and it makes sense to me, right? Because I realized that there was the loyalists of England, and it makes sense that 50% of the people were focused on just hand to mouth, you know, and making it work. There was guys with some God-given understanding of what could be made here, right? And I like, it's not even a political thing. It's like they came up with not a democracy; it was a constitutional republic, right? Things that we don't necessarily discuss about. All the things, right? The way that everything was set up, they had the foresight because they were living all that. You know, I'd say the mass population is wrong most of the time. They don't understand it because they don't have the things. And I don't want to say that I'm that enlightened soul, but I would like to be. I don't want to repeat the mistakes of history.
And one of the things that's missing is, you know, that association to a greater God, a creator, you know, and this moral compass of right and wrong, and you know, and that was the common thread, I think, of our founding fathers is, you know, this idea that we had a creator, this idea that, you know, it took a while, you know, 100-something years for us to finally say we're going to treat everybody equal, and, you know, and even probably 200 years. But, you know, it's one of those things where there was a common thread, and I would love to have a conversation, you know, with some of those guys, you know, wearing their wigs and, you know, all that stuff, and just really start to get to know kind of what they were thinking, because I believe that most of us would find them not only interesting, but we would have a lot in common. But it just gets muted so much in today's world because we don't know what it's like to go without. We don't know what it's like to live under an authoritarian ruler and being told what we're going to think, what we're going to believe, who we're going to worship, what we're going to do for an occupation, who we're going to marry, you know, all those things that are foreign concepts to us today. You know, that's what they were wanting to, you know, prevent. And little by little, you know, we're kind of handing back, you know, some of those freedoms, and it's frustrating. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I guarantee I could never pass a background check to run for office. So I will never run for office because there's just a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be, you know, brought to the surface again. Sure. But you know, it's like we've got to have smart people with good values, you know, kind of running this place. That you know, not people that are trying to tear it apart for the sake of being right, not people that are willing to you know, do dishonest things for their own personal benefit, you know, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people feel is they just can't be trusted to make wise decisions because they haven't made wise decisions on a personal level. So what makes us think that they're going to make wise decisions on a national level? And it's not one party or the other. It's that criticism is universal.
Absolutely.
Universal.
Yeah. That's the frustration, I think, for me personally.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's just one of those things that I think, you know, young people, if that's what we're talking about or talking to, hopefully, is young people on this podcast, you know, you got to get engaged. You've got to believe in something of value. You've got to contribute, treat other people with respect. And I'm starting to sound like an old man, but, you know, you just watch this stuff long enough and you're just like, well, you know, I was down at my son's house, you know, a few months ago, And I just happened to be looking out the window of his house, and I hear this commotion across the street. And he lives in one of these gated communities, small, shoebox houses, 4 feet apart, and no backyard and no driveway. It's just right off into the street. And he's down there, at UNLV going to dental school, and I hear this commotion, and it's these two neighbors that live 3 doors down that are yelling and kind of calling each other out. And sure enough, the guy turns around, walks into his garage. His truck door is open, and I'll be damned if he doesn't grab a gun and shove it down his waist, pants on his sweats. I'm just like, oh, so this is how this happens. Okay, I'm from Highland, Utah, so this ought to be interesting. And I'm just like, is somebody going to die? Today?
Yeah.
Is somebody going to dramatically change their life because of a 30-second or 45-second overheated emotional dispute because the one neighbor drove by too fast and it made the other neighbor mad and I'm just like, this is how it happens, is just losing that emotional maturity, losing a sense of the fact that this guy is going to be living 3 doors down from you for a while.
Yeah.
Probably best not to pull a gun on him, maybe. Be a good idea. Think twice. And so I'm just thinking, how many thousands of times a day does that kind of interaction happen needlessly in America? And, everybody's on edge. You've got all these ridiculous shootings and mass killings, the guy that drove his car into a group of people standing, waiting for the bus. And, it's heartbreaking. It's permanent. You kill somebody, it's pretty permanent.
Yeah.
For everybody, and a word to the wise, you can't get away with murder. It doesn't happen. There's a camera somewhere. There's DNA somewhere.
Yeah. Nobody
Nobody gets away with murder. So really dumb idea to try and, do that. It's unfortunate that that's where society is at, and you just see these things and you're like, wow, and then, my first thought was, is this really where I want my son and his family to live, across the street from some hothead who doesn't even think twice about putting a Glock in his waistband ready to rumble?
He didn't shoot him.
He didn't shoot him. No, he didn't even pull it out and brandish it. But he was ready to go. And it's just like, wow, is life that meaningless? Your own and your neighbors,
Yeah, and it could happen that fast, right? I mean, to affect generations to come. Really is. I mean, something like that would happen. And I think, you say, yes, hopefully anybody can get something out of this discussion that we're having today, but it is, I think, geared for the 20-something and younger, maybe some. I try to convey to them, they're pretty amazing, right? But not necessarily any more so, right? There's the responsibility that comes with that, and to be successful in this country, make it, to see what we have, right, and not squander it, right? I believe that we can. I want to believe that we can reverse some of these things that have happened. I don't know what it's going to take. I really don't know, and I don't know if it's got to economically get worse or something. But I'm not thinking in those terms, like what, take advantage of an opportunity. The thing is just like, maybe be reminded what we do have and what's happened, and try to understand that a little bit better, because they do have the tools to do whatever they want.
Right.
I think. Better than at any other
Opportunity
time.
is limitless. It's crazy. Anybody that wants to go to college, get a higher education, there is a path.
Yeah.
Absolutely, there's a path for that. It doesn't matter what your economic, socioeconomic, race, religion, whatever.
Yeah.
There is a path forward for everybody out there. No matter what your past is, there's a path forward. And there's so many tools and resources and people willing to help and encourage and kind of, you know, push all the brush out of the way and create a path. And it's, you know, it's a tragedy that there are people in our country that don't see that and have given up on themselves. You know, you see, you know, I don't spend a lot of time in inner cities. I've been to inner cities, but, you know, and it's sad, you know, if people have given up on the hope of, you know, well, I don't know what to do. You know, I hate my job and I'm working, you know, fast food or whatever. Oh, and I love fast food, so we love fast food workers. But, you know, it's not intended to be a 40-year career either, you know, and so, you know, you just got to figure out what you want to be. There's a path forward, and you know, enjoy the effort, because that's part of the blessing of accomplishment is putting in some effort.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe in buttoning some things up here and talking today is, and then it's kind of gone down with exactly the way I hoped it would, from the standpoint. Anybody that's followed any of my stuff that I've been talking for the last couple of months is that I feel like, I could hit reset. You can do it. You can come back. You can do whatever, right? And the opportunity's there. And I've just had so many blessings. I mean, from the family that I was raised in, as well as just other opportunities that have come. My association with people, you know, I mean, people are very forgiving, actually. You know, I mean, I remember holding these things over my own head, and people are like, you know what? What are you doing today? What do you got going on in your life? Right? That's people.
Yeah.
Will let you come back into that. And it doesn't take very long. It's really, we stand in our own way of what we say we can or can't do. The discussion we had here today, really, and I didn't, you know, plan for it to be this way. We just let the open dialogue happen, which is, I mean, you go from a farming community, which is what you thought you would do, to coming down here. We meet 20-something years ago, and you move to Cedar City. You do all, I mean, you know, it takes a couple years to get into it. I mean, that thing that you had, I'm just like you from the standpoint, I could never be a good employee. I would always try to come up with a better idea, I think, you know, and it'd be hard. It's hard for me to work next to somebody. We're getting paid the same, and I know I'm staying later, getting there earlier, and I know what my production was. So not that I'm saying I'm better. Some people could do really well and lift from other people. To me, I'm like, no. I just want to get paid what I do at the end of the day, right? But some of those things come. Instead of letting that go, you go back. You get do you own the farm, the land? You bought it. You own that.
Yeah.
The farming operation. Your brother had, and I don't know your brother, but I remember he owned some land there too, or farmed it.
He had a farm about 20 miles away.
Okay.
He formed a partnership with another guy, and I never farmed with my brother.
Okay.
We, you know, trade equipment and kind of work together from time to time, but. Yeah, he still owns his farmland and leases it out. I lease out our farm ground that Karen and I own, and you know, it's just, you know, kind of a passive long-term investment, and it's you know, I don't know that I'll ever sell it. You know, maybe my kids will. I don't know. That's a decision that they'll have to make at whatever time. But you know, there's just so many, you know, memories and just this emotional attachment, you know, to know that my great-grandfather, you know, took a grubbing hoe and, you know, chopped out sagebrush and leveled it and helped dig the ditches. Yeah.
He cleared the land.
He cleared it.
Nobody had farmed it
Nope.
ever before.
Nope.
Yeah.
And, you know, they worked together as a community and dug the canals to irrigate it. It's all irrigated and you know, spent a lot of time and effort and wore out a lot of horses and men, you know, leveling it and getting it to where it is today. And, you know, it's just, you know, one of those things that if you know, you know, and if you don't, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, who I am, right or wrong. It's who I am, and so.
Well, I think we could end there, but I do have just a question or two. Real estate market,
Yeah.
what you're doing. You talked about maybe expanding your operations here,
Yeah.
doing it if you can do it. And
Yeah.
do you foresee, even with some of the calamities that they're talking about happening, do you foresee that it's going to be something? I mean, we still have to eat, we still have to live somewhere, and there's going to be some trade going on,
Right.
right? So sometimes when I think about how bad could it be, which means it could be really bad for a short period sometimes, right? I mean, we've seen that before with a couple of the calamities. Where do you see this happening, and where this is going? Are you going to continue to expand and try to service your clients at a greater level?
Yeah, until I'm convinced that people are tired of brown boxes showing up on their doorstep with crap inside that they don't really need, but they want, and they click a button and it shows up the next day.
Yeah.
Until they're tired of that, I think my career is pretty safe. And
I would agree with that. Yes. Of course.
there's a lot of transition and migration of production that's happening throughout the world. Some of the foreign policies. COVID brought a lot of things to a head. It showed a lot of weaknesses in our supply chain. It showed a lot of exposure to companies, and lean manufacturing looks awesome on paper, but all it takes is one little straw to come out of that pile and everything just collapses.
Yeah.
I'm in the equipment business, and our equipment is made globally, and the parts for our equipment are made globally. And you can have a $75,000 piece of equipment sitting in a lot waiting to be shipped, and what they're waiting on is a $4 microchip. And it's stopping $75,000 worth of commerce from happening for a $4 microchip. Well, all of a sudden, you're okay spending $1,000 for that microchip just to move on with life. And
Yep.
so sometimes cheapest always, isn't always best. And so there's a lot of transition happening, with manufacturing, and as a country, we need to do a lot more of that. Mm-hmm. We have, the greatest technology, the most innovative people, and it's because here in America, you can still get rewarded for being smart and being a risk taker.
Yeah. And
so there's smart people taking a lot of risks, and they're being very well rewarded for that, which is how it should be. And so I think the industrial market has a lot of interesting zigs and zags ahead of it. I think Utah has a very, very bright future in front of it, just because a well-run state government for the most part.
Yeah.
And there are communities that people want to live in. We just have a lot of pluses when you start to stack us up against other places that you could live or work or start a business or move a business, and so I think we're going to get through it just fine. There's going to be a lot of Rolaids eaten over the next year or two, and probably some recentering of some projects and getting away with building stuff with no money is probably going to become more difficult, where you're going to have real capital and a more systematic approach to it. But we've been there before. It'll come again, and everybody always thinks it's gonna, whatever direction it's going to stay going in that direction, and however bad it's going to be, it's going to get worse, and
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a lot of things to be positive about. I think Utah County has pretty impressive growth track ahead of it, and we've got a lot of 70,000 college kids right here in,
Yeah.
within literally 5 miles of where we're sitting.
Yeah.
And they're smart kids.
Yeah.
And they kind of like living here. So, it's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah.
They're going to start a lot of companies and do a lot of cool things that I have no way of even predicting what those are.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and it folds into the other side. I've said and ended a lot of broadcasts on this note saying, whenever there is challenge, right, there's opportunity. There is opportunity. But when there's calamity that's going to happen, I've witnessed it every single time. Somebody comes up with a better idea, just a better way of doing things, and they're always rewarded. That's the country we live in, right? For the most
Yeah.
part, if they can see it and harvest it or solve that problem. And
well, when you brought up Elon Musk,
yeah,
how do you get mad at a guy for being worth $100 billion or whatever he's worth?
yeah,
Has figured out how to make a rocket not only go up in the air, that's pretty easy, but land. That's the cool part.
it's mind-boggling.
To shoot a
especially-
bullet in the air and then have it land right where you want it to land.
Because when he was talking about doing it, the best scientists in the world and everybody
Yeah.
at NASA is like, what the hell is he talking about?
Right.
It's like the kid fell on his head. He doesn't know. It's like, you don't do it that way, right? I
Yeah.
mean, nobody was in his corner, right?
Right.
I mean, when he was talking, and he just kept, talking about going to Mars, right? He was
Yeah.
talking about, I mean, he's got, to me, the one that actually blows me away is the boring company, right?
Yeah.
He's building roads underneath that actually
Cities.
bore and lay the concrete behind it. These,
Yeah.
whatever the size tunnels they are. When I found out what he was doing with that, right? And of course, then you go to Neuralink,
Yeah.
put little diodes in your brain or little
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, the guy doesn't think in terms, I mean, he's solving problems, right?
Yeah.
How do we solve palsy, whatever, Parkinson's? I mean, you name it. It's like, well, we know kind of where the part in the brain, we'll figure that out. We're going to
Yeah.
put little micro hair things in there, and it just blows my mind. I mean,
Yeah.
I love the way he thinks, right? And I know he's probably made a lot of comments that will never come true, right? But he's on that leading edge.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe anything's not possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who the hell's going to go up to Mars? That's what I keep saying. Who's going to be the people that are going to go to Mars and set up?
Well, did the Tesla with the guy playing the radio that he launched a year or two ago?
Yeah.
Has that guy made it? I haven't heard anything about him. I'd like to, I don't know why they didn't put a GoPro on the guy's rearview mirror when they launched the Tesla.
I think they got something like that. I think they just launched him into space. I don't know if he's going towards Mars or not.
I don't know. I would like to kind of keep up on him.
see,
If
I've
he was
heard-
on TikTok, I would follow him.
Yeah.
Latest TikTok from, whatever his name was, Homer or whatever, that's flying the Tesla to Mars. That'd be
They could
kinda
just
cool.
have it like streaming on something where you could just check in every
just-
once in a while.
Yeah, it's like a game camera. You're just like,
Yeah.
did the elk come by
Oh,
today?
how's he doing right now?
Oh, she looks like an asteroid. Took out his front fender. Oh, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, from pop culture and politics, and it's pretty wild. What's going on, and
There's amazing
and AI.
things.
I mean, I heard a thing the other day of and this is a little scary, and I think I got the facts, but it's like some girl got a phone call from her mom that was an AI, a fake phone call.
It was the other way around.
Was it?
The mom got it, and they were impersonating the daughter,
Okay.
saying, "I've got these people," right? So they had recorded her voice or heard it at some point, right?
Yeah.
So and they faked
Yeah.
that it was her calling from her phone number to her mom. It's like, hey, you got to give them money, right? Or
Yeah.
they're gonna.
That's like a ransom
yeah,
type
right.
of thing.
Like a phony kidnap, Meanwhile, the kids over on the swing set, oblivious,
Yeah.
and the mom's having a complete freak out,
Meltdown, right.
and yeah, I mean,
It is weird. Joe Rogan did a podcast with
Oh, Steve Jobs.
Steve
right?
Jobs.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs has been dead for a while. They never did a podcast together, but they go back and forth, and they actually have the image of them doing it too.
did they
Now,
smoke weed? Because that's how you know if it's true or not. If they're lighting a fatty up, then you're like, I think he was there.
I don't think that they could duplicate that with it. I'm sure they maybe could, but they didn't go to. I didn't see it. I've heard little bits of it, just heard, and it's interesting because the voice is right. It doesn't have the same emotion like if they're talking back and forth, or
Right.
the chuckle or something like that with
Right.
something that's stupid or funny, maybe that they would have had back and forth. But it is pretty amazing. I mean, this is
Yeah.
like the first run at doing it. So, I mean, yeah, people are going to be replaced. I mean,
How does anybody know that it's really me? Maybe I'm a hologram.
this is where we're going
So
to.
we've got to have proof of life somehow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know how that's
They'll
going to
be
work.
able to track your phone. We're not going
Right.
to get into all that stuff right now at this day,
Right.
but we're here, and
I'll
These are
take
good
the drink
questions.
of water to make
Yeah.
everybody think I'm a human,
Yes.
but I'm really,
and I didn't
hologram.
drink enough water, so I maybe
Maybe
have some
that
cotton mouth
water's
looking.
not even real. How do we know?
Yeah, could be moonshine.
We live in a very interesting time, and I think lots of stuff. But and I think let's just end there from that for today. I've got I'm going to lose battery time on this thing. I didn't charge enough, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to have you come back at some point. I don't know where, maybe after this little bit of calamity and get some
Yeah.
feedback. But I really appreciate you
can't
coming
wait.
on.
I can't
the
wait
show.
to see the comments, and just see, like,
You know,
what
for
a
the-
what a
for the
knucklehead.
most part.
He really is a monkey from Idaho. What
You know what?
the heck?
I've had pretty positive
Yeah.
feedback. Actually, more. It's what kind of keeps me doing it because I've got a couple guys that have referred to me as a boomer. Oh yeah, what a boomer-tastic short video that they did. I was talking about Twitter.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle of hey, we got in at 10 o'clock, and that one's probably gone viral more than any of them. A couple hundred, 250, 60,000 people, seen it or comment, whatever on that, and it's this old guy that's trying to be all work ethic and stuff like that. And I don't understand what it's like to work in the tech field. I don't actually, but
And I don't want to learn.
I don't want to know
No.
actually for that for sure. And
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to the industrial guys. Maybe the number one reason is that when they talk about writing a check for something, that they've got the money to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Right?
it's not BS. It's real.
not BS. They're not driving. I don't know too many of them that drive Ferraris, Lamborghinis, that type of thing. And I'm not downing anybody that does. I'm saying
Yeah.
it doesn't even enter their realm for the most part.
Right.
Right. It's like, why the hell would you buy that thing when you've got
these
these new trucks that have everything in them, right?
Right.
And it's hard to argue that anyway, one way or the
Yeah.
other. But they
I
are
love
very
my truck.
expensive trucks too, man. But I'm still driving that Dodge Dakota 06 is my truck, and I actually choose to drive that more days than take my Jeep. But at the end of the day, that's what I enjoy doing. Anyway, that's for
Yeah.
another time. But thank you for spending
Yeah.
your time. We know how busy you are. We're
Yeah.
thankful that you came and shared your thoughts. 'Cause I think it was a great show, and please subscribe, and give us any feedback of what you think we could do better to make this in the future. Have a great week. Thank you for coming.
Bet. Thanks.